The security camera beeped its final calibration tone as I stepped back to admire my handiwork. There we go, I muttered to the empty kitchen. Now even the NSA would be jealous of our surveillance setup. My name is Nick Warren, and I've spent the last 15 years installing security systems for paranoid suburbanites who think their neighbors are plotting to steal their garden gnomes. Never thought I'd be installing one in my own house to spy on my own wife. But here we are. Claire walked into the kitchen, her hospital scrubs still crisp despite her supposed 12-hour shift. She glanced at the new camera mounted above the refrigerator with what I could only describe as annoyance. Really, Nick? In the kitchen, too? Her voice carried that tone I'd been hearing more often lately, like she was talking to a particularly slow child. Security is security, honey. Besides, with all those late shifts you've been pulling at the hospital, I want to make sure the kids are safe when I'm not here. I kept my voice light, but something in her expression made my stomach twist. The kids are always safe with me. She opened the refrigerator and pulled out ingredients for what looked like one of her infamous smoothies. You know that. I did know that, or at least I used to. Claire had been acting strange for months. The late shifts that never appeared on her schedule when I called the hospital. The hushed phone conversations that ended abruptly when I entered the room. The way she'd started locking her phone and taking it everywhere, even to the bathroom. Daddy, look what I drew! 8-year-old Ellie bounced into the kitchen, clutching a crayon masterpiece that appeared to be our family standing in front of a house. Except in her drawing, Mommy was standing very far away from the rest of us. That's beautiful, sweetheart. I ruffled her dark hair, so much like mine. Why don't you go show Max? He's in the living room with his trucks. As Ellie skipped away, I caught Claire watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. There was something calculating in her eyes, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. My phone buzzed. A text from my buddy Eli, who'd gotten out of the army the same time I did, but had gone into private investigation instead of home security. Beer tonight? Got some interesting stories from the cheating spouse beat. I glanced at Claire, who was now aggressively chopping vegetables with more force than necessary. Can't tonight. Family dinner? I typed back. Trouble in paradise? I didn't respond. Eli had always been too perceptive for his own good. The next few hours passed in tense domesticity. Claire made dinner, some organic, gluten-free monstrosity that the kids picked at while making faces. She barely touched her own plate, claiming she'd eaten at the hospital. How was work today? I asked, making conversation. Busy. Dr. Morrison had 3 emergencies come in, and we had that new equipment delivery. She didn't look up from her untouched food. David from Med Supply was there again, showing off the new monitoring systems. David. She'd mentioned him before, always in passing, always casual, but his name had been coming up more and more lately. Sounds like he's there a lot. It's a big account. Her tone was defensive. He has to be thorough. After dinner, I helped the kids with homework, while Claire disappeared upstairs, claiming she needed to catch up on paperwork. Through the ceiling, I could hear her voice, muffled but animated. She was talking to someone, but when I strained to listen, the conversation stopped. At 11 p.m., I was lying in bed next to my wife, listening to her breathe and wondering when we'd become strangers. The security system's control panel glowed softly on my nightstand. All zones secure, all cameras recording. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, my phone was ringing. The caller ID showed my company's emergency line. Mr. Warren? The voice belonged to Tommy, one of our newer installation techs. I'm really sorry to call this late, but I'm monitoring the feeds from your house installation today, and he paused, and I could hear him swallowing hard. What is it, Tommy? Sir, I'm deleting this footage forever. I'm telling you as a father, get your kids and leave that house. My blood went cold. Why? Sir, what I saw at 3 a.m. in your kitchen made me vomit. Stay away from your wife. The line went dead. I looked at Claire, sleeping peacefully beside me, her blonde hair spread across the pillow. In the dim light from the security panel, she looked like the woman I'd married 9 years ago, the woman who'd promised to love and honor me, who'd given me 2 beautiful children, who'd been my anchor when I'd struggled to adjust to civilian life. But Tommy's words echoed in my head. Stay away from your wife. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Tommy's voice, shaking with disgust and fear. At 5 a.m., I gave up pretending and crept downstairs to my home office. The security system's main computer hummed quietly in the corner, its hard drives storing every moment of our lives in high definition. I'd designed it to be comprehensive. Cameras in every room except the bedrooms and bathrooms, motion sensors, audio recording, the works. Now I was about to find out why my own employee had advised me to run. I pulled up the footage from 3 a.m. and started the playback. At first, everything looked normal. Empty kitchen, soft glow from the appliance lights, nothing moving. Then, at 3:17 a.m., the kitchen light flicked on. Claire appeared in the frame, but this wasn't the Claire I knew. Her hair was disheveled, and she was wearing only a thin nightgown that was stained with something dark and viscous. As she moved closer to the camera, I could see the stains were green, like she'd been finger painting with algae. What the hell? I whispered to the empty office. On screen, Claire moved to the refrigerator and began pulling out containers. Yogurt, protein powder, spinach, and something in an unmarked jar that looked suspiciously like the green substance coating her nightgown. She dumped everything into our high-powered blender, but instead of the usual smoothie routine, she started talking to herself. Or rather, talking to the blender. You know too much, don't you, you little bastard? Her voice was sing-song, almost playful, but there was something unhinged about it. Always watching, always recording. Well, let's see how you like this recipe. I leaned closer to the screen, my heart hammering. This wasn't the woman I'd shared a bed with for 9 years. This was someone else entirely. Someone who talked to kitchen appliances like they were sentient beings. But then the camera angle shifted slightly. The motion sensor must have detected something, and I saw what had made Tommy vomit. Claire wasn't alone. A shadow moved behind her, and then hands appeared, sliding around her waist from behind. Male hands with a distinctive gold watch I'd seen before. Did you add the special ingredient? A voice asked, low and intimate. David, the medical equipment salesman who was always so thorough with his big account. Of course. Claire leaned back against him and his hands moved higher, cupping her breasts through the stained nightgown. Nick will never know what hit him. Literally. They kissed, and I watched my wife's tongue explore another man's mouth while she held a blender full of God knows what that was apparently meant for me. What about the kids? David's voice was muffled against her neck. They'll be fine. The dosage is calibrated for Nick's weight. They might get a little sick, but nothing permanent. Claire's voice was clinical, detached. Once he's out of the picture, we can start our new life. I stopped the playback, my hands shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. My wife was trying to poison me. My wife was having an affair. My wife was planning to hurt our children in the process. The rational part of my mind kicked in. The part that had kept me alive through 2 tours in Afghanistan. I needed to get the kids to safety first. Evidence second. Revenge third. I crept upstairs and quietly packed bags for Ellie and Max, moving like the soldier I used to be. Claire never stirred, sleeping the peaceful sleep of someone with a clear conscience. Or no conscience at all. 20 minutes later, I was loading my confused children into the car. Where are we going, Daddy? Max rubbed his eyes, clutching his favorite truck. Adventure, buddy. We're going to stay with Uncle Eli for a few days. What about Mommy? Ellie was more awake, more suspicious. Mommy needs some alone time. It was the truth, even if she didn't know it yet. As I drove through the empty streets toward Eli's apartment, I called him. Nick, it's 5:30 in the morning. Someone better be dead. Not yet, I said grimly. But I think my wife is trying to poison me, or the blender, or both. There was a long pause. I'll put on coffee. Strong coffee. Eli's apartment looked exactly like you'd expect a bachelor PI's place to look. Pizza boxes, surveillance equipment, and a coffee maker that could probably power a small city. He took one look at my face and the kids' overnight bags and started clearing space on his couch. Uncle Eli! Ellie threw herself at him, and despite everything, I smiled. Eli had been there for every birthday, every Christmas, every important moment in their lives. If anyone could help me figure out how to protect them, it was him. Hey there, troublemaker. He ruffled her hair, then looked at me over her head. His expression was grim. Kids, why don't you set up camp in the spare room? I've got some new video games you can try. Once they were settled, Eli poured 2 cups of coffee that could strip paint and sat across from me at his kitchen table. Talk? I told him everything. The strange behavior, the late nights, the security footage. By the time I finished, his jaw was tight and his knuckles were white around his coffee mug. You saved the footage? Copied to 3 different drives before I left the house. Good man. Now we need to know how deep this goes. If she's planning to poison you, there's more to this than just an affair. He pulled out a notebook and started writing. Tell me about this David character. David Halloran. Works for Med Supply Solutions, services the hospital where Claire works. Married, I think. Drives a silver BMW that he's way too proud of. I'll run a background check. What about Claire's friends? Anyone who might be helping her? I thought about it. Trish Kowalski. She's a nurse at the hospital, Claire's best friend. They've been thick as thieves since nursing school. And there's Jared something. He works in the hospital's tech department. Claire's mentioned him a few times recently. Eli nodded, scribbling notes. I'll start surveillance today. You need to act normal. Go to work, maintain routine, but don't eat or drink anything Claire gives you. And don't let her know you suspect anything. What about the kids? They stay here until we know exactly what we're dealing with. The next few days were the hardest of my life. I went home each evening and pretended everything was normal, while my wife asked casual questions about where the children were. I told her they were having an extended sleepover with friends, and she seemed almost relieved. Meanwhile, Eli was earning his fee. He followed Claire to work, documented her meetings with David, and started building a timeline of their affair. The pictures he showed me made my stomach turn. Claire and David kissing in the hospital parking garage, holding hands in a restaurant across town, entering a motel together on what was supposed to be Claire's day off. But the real breakthrough came when Eli planted a listening device in the hospital break room. Your wife and her friends are not as smart as they think they are, he said, playing back the audio from that afternoon. Claire's voice came through clearly. Nick is so clueless. He actually thinks I'm working late. Next week, we finish the plan. David's got it all set up. Are you sure about the dosage? That was Trish, her voice nervous. I've been researching it for months, just enough to make him sick, weak. Then David and I can take care of him properly. What if someone finds out? A male voice I didn't recognize, probably Jared. Who's going to suspect anything? Nick's been having stomach problems for weeks. Everyone at the hospital knows he's been stressed about work. When he has his accident, it'll just be tragic. My blood ran cold. Accident? Eli's face was stone. Keep listening. David's voice joined the conversation. The life insurance payout is substantial, plus the house, the savings accounts. We'll wait a respectable amount of time, then Claire and I can start fresh somewhere else. What about the kids? Trish again. They'll adjust. Children are resilient. Claire's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was discussing the weather. I stood up so fast my chair toppled over. I'm going to kill them. All of them. No, you're not. Eli grabbed my arm. You're going to be smart about this. We're going to destroy them. But we're going to do it legally and thoroughly. By the time we're done, they'll wish you had just killed them. He was right, of course. But as I listened to my wife casually discuss my murder and the abandonment of our children, something cold and hard settled in my chest. Claire wanted to play games? Fine. But she was about to learn that her husband had been trained by the best military minds in the world to win wars. And this was war. The next morning, Eli and I met at a diner across town to plan our counterattack. He'd spent the night running background checks and building profiles on everyone involved in Claire's conspiracy. David Halloran, 41, married to Patricia Halloran for 15 years, 2 teenage kids. His wife thinks he's been working late on big accounts. Sound familiar? Eli slid a folder across the table. He's got a gambling problem, owes money to some very unpleasant people, and his company is investigating inventory discrepancies. So he needs money, desperately. Your life insurance policy would solve all his problems. Eli opened another folder. Trish Kowalski, divorced, bitter about it, has been Claire's enabler since college. And Jared Morrison, and yes, he's related to Dr. Morrison, the department head, nepotism hire, with access to all kinds of medical supplies and records. I studied the photos and documents. They've been planning this for months, at least. But here's the thing, they're amateurs. They've left digital footprints everywhere, and they're overconfident. We can use that. We spent the next 2 hours crafting a plan that would systematically destroy each member of Claire's little conspiracy. It wouldn't be quick, and it wouldn't be clean, but it would be thorough. Phase 1, David. That afternoon, I followed David to his favorite lunch spot, an upscale restaurant where he apparently took all his conquests. He was sitting alone, probably waiting for Claire, when I made my move. I didn't confront him directly. Instead, I called in a favor from my old army buddy Jake, who now worked in auto repair. While David was inside flirting with the waitress, Jake and I had a little conversation with his precious BMW. We didn't damage anything permanently. That would be illegal. But we did hide several pounds of raw shrimp in various hard-to-reach places throughout the car's interior. By tomorrow, David's pride and joy would smell like a fish market in August. We also left a note under his windshield wiper. I know about you and Claire. Next time, it won't just be your car. From across the street, I watched David discover the note when he returned from lunch. His face went white, and he immediately pulled out his phone, probably calling Claire in a panic. Good. Let them panic. That evening, I went home and acted like nothing had happened. Claire seemed nervous, distracted, constantly checking her phone. When it rang during dinner, she practically lunged for it. I have to take this, she said, hurrying out of the room. Through the kitchen door, I could hear her voice urgent and worried. What do you mean someone left a note? How could anyone know? I smiled and took another bite of my dinner, takeout pizza I'd picked up on the way home. I wasn't eating anything Claire prepared ever again. Phase 2 began the next day when Eli started following Trish. It didn't take long to discover that Claire's best friend had a very loose tongue, especially after a few drinks at her regular happy hour spot. Eli recorded her bragging to strangers about her friend's brilliant plan to get rid of her husband and start fresh with her new man. Trish, it turned out, was the weak link in their conspiracy, the one who couldn't keep her mouth shut when she'd had a few cocktails. She's been telling anyone who'll listen about Claire's affair, Eli reported. Doesn't mention the poisoning directly, but she's definitely implying that Claire's husband might have an unfortunate accident soon. Perfect. What about Jared? He's the tech guy, so he's naturally paranoid. But he's also lazy. He's been using the hospital's computers to research untraceable poisons and life insurance policies. IT security is a joke there. I was able to access his browsing history in about 10 minutes. Everything was falling into place. But I wanted more than just evidence of their crimes. I wanted them to suffer the way they'd made me suffer. I wanted them to feel the betrayal, the fear, the helplessness. I wanted revenge. That night, I called David's house. His wife, Patricia, answered, "Mrs. Halloran, you don't know me, but I think we need to talk about your husband's recent business trips." There was a long pause. "Who is this?" "Someone who cares about the truth. Your husband hasn't been working late. He's been having an affair with a married woman named Claire Warren. I have photos, if you're interested." Another pause, longer this time. "I'll meet you tomorrow, 1 o'clock at the Starbucks on Maple Street. I'll be there." The next afternoon, I sat across from Patricia Halloran and watched her world crumble as I showed her the surveillance photos. She was an attractive woman in her 40s, with kind eyes that filled with tears as she looked at pictures of her husband kissing another woman. "How long?" she whispered. "At least 6 months that we know of. Probably longer." She wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. "What do you want from me?" "Help me stop them. They're not just having an affair. They're planning to murder me for my life insurance money." Patricia's eyes widened, and then something hard and cold settled in her expression. "Tell me what you need." Patricia Halloran turned out to be a valuable ally. She'd been suspicious of David's behavior for months, but hadn't wanted to face the truth. Now that she knew, she was ready to fight back. "He's been draining our savings," she told me over coffee. "Taking cash advances on credit cards, selling things from the house. I thought it was for his gambling debts. But now I realize he's been planning to leave me." "What does he know about poisons?" "Nothing directly, but his company supplies medical equipment to hospitals all over the state. He has access to all kinds of pharmaceutical information." She paused, thinking. "There's something else. He's been asking weird questions about my life insurance policy, wanting to know about beneficiaries, payout schedules." A chill ran down my spine. "Patricia, you need to be very careful. If they're willing to kill me for money, you might be in danger too." Her face went pale, but her voice remained steady. "What do we do?" "We end this. Tonight." I'd been planning this confrontation for days, waiting for the right moment. Claire thought I was working late, a security installation at a warehouse across town. Instead, I was parked outside our house with Eli, watching my wife and her lover through the windows of what used to be my happy home. "They're in the kitchen," Eli observed through binoculars. "Looks like they're cooking something." More poison? Only one way to find out. We waited until David left. He always parked 2 blocks away to avoid being seen by neighbors. Then I used my key to enter through the front door. Claire was at the sink, washing dishes, humming softly to herself. She looked so normal, so innocent. If I hadn't seen the footage, hadn't heard the recordings, I might have thought this was all a terrible mistake. "Hey, honey," I said casually. "How was your day?" She spun around, startled. "Nick, you're home early. I thought you were working late." "Finished up sooner than expected." I walked into the kitchen, noting the blender on the counter, freshly washed. "What did you make for dinner?" "Just a smoothie. I wasn't very hungry." Her voice was steady, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "Mind if I try some? I'm starving." "Oh, I already cleaned everything up. Maybe tomorrow?" I opened the refrigerator and pulled out the ingredients I'd seen her use in the security footage. "That's okay. I'll make my own. You know how much I love your special recipe." Claire's face went white. "Nick, you don't need to." "I insist." I started dumping ingredients into the blender, including the unmarked jar I'd found hidden behind the milk. "What's in this one? It looks interesting." "That's just protein powder, a new brand." I opened the jar and sniffed. It smelled like almonds with an underlying chemical odor that made my nose burn. "Smells strong. How much should I use?" "Nick, please, you don't want that. It's not good." I looked at my wife, really looked at her. The woman I'd loved, trusted, built a life with. The mother of my children. And I saw a stranger. "You're right," I said quietly. "It's not good. In fact, it's poison, isn't it, Claire?" She backed against the counter, her eyes wide with panic. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do." I pulled out my phone and started playing the audio recording from the hospital break room. Her own voice filled the kitchen, casual and cold. "Nick is so clueless. Next week we finish the plan." Claire's legs gave out, and she slid down the cabinet to sit on the floor. "Nick, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain why you've been slowly poisoning me for weeks? Can you explain why you're planning to murder me for insurance money? Can you explain why you're willing to risk our children's lives in the process?" Tears were streaming down her face now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no love. Just cold, calculating rage. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she whispered. "David and I, we fell in love. But you wouldn't let me go. You would have fought for custody, taken the house, made everything difficult. So, you decided to kill me instead. We just wanted to be together. You wanted my money. You wanted my life insurance. You wanted to erase me and start fresh, and you didn't care what it did to Ellie and Max." I pulled out my phone and called 911. "I need to report an attempted murder. My wife has been poisoning me." Claire scrambled to her feet, lunging for the phone. "No, Nick, please, think about the children." I held the phone out of her reach. "I am thinking about them. That's why you're never going to see them again." The police arrived 20 minutes later, followed by paramedics and crime scene investigators. I handed over the security footage, the audio recordings, and the jar of poison. Claire was arrested on the spot, still crying and begging me to think about our family. But we weren't a family anymore. She'd destroyed that the moment she decided I was worth more dead than alive. As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. I loved you, Nick. I really did. No, I said quietly. You loved what I could give you. There's a difference. But the night wasn't over. David, Trish, and Jared were still out there, still conspirators in attempted murder, and I wasn't finished with them yet. Not even close. With Claire in custody, the rest of her conspiracy began to unravel quickly. David panicked when he couldn't reach her, and his desperation made him sloppy. Eli followed him as he drove frantically around town, trying to figure out what had gone wrong with their plan. Meanwhile, Patricia Halloran was putting phase 2 of our revenge into motion. I confronted him about the affair, she told me over the phone. Told him I knew everything and that I was filing for divorce. He's at the Riverside Motel now, probably trying to drink away his problems. Perfect. Is everything ready on your end? The papers are filed, the bank accounts are frozen, and I've already spoken to his boss about the missing inventory. David's going to find himself unemployed, divorced, and under criminal investigation by tomorrow morning. Trish was easier to handle. Eli simply showed up at her apartment with recordings of her drunken confessions and a choice: cooperate with the police investigation or face charges as an accessory to attempted murder. She chose cooperation, sobbing through her confession about how she'd helped Claire research poisons and plan my accident. That left Jared, the tech specialist, who'd provided the medical expertise for their poisoning scheme. He was the smartest of the group and the most dangerous. He might try to destroy evidence or disappear entirely. So I decided to flush him out. I had Eli spread word through the hospital grapevine that I was planning to drop all charges against Claire in exchange for a large cash settlement. The story was that I just wanted to avoid the scandal and move on with my life. It was exactly the kind of weak, naive behavior that had made them think they could get away with murder in the first place. Jared took the bait. He called me that evening, his voice carefully neutral. Mr. Warren, this is Jared Morrison from the hospital. I heard about Claire's situation, and I wanted to offer my condolences. Thank you. It's been a difficult time. I'm sure it has. Listen, I know this might sound inappropriate, but I heard you might be willing to work out some kind of arrangement to avoid dragging this through the courts. I'm considering it. Claire made some mistakes, but I don't want to destroy our children's mother if there's another way. That's very understanding of you. Perhaps we could meet to discuss the details? I might be able to help facilitate a resolution that works for everyone. Everyone? Well, Claire wasn't acting alone, was she? There might be other parties interested in reaching an amicable settlement. I smiled grimly. He was trying to buy his way out of murder charges. I suppose we could meet. Tomorrow night at my house? Say 8 o'clock? Perfect. I'll bring some paperwork that might interest you. After I hung up, I called Eli. He's coming tomorrow night. Are you ready? Born ready. This is going to be fun. The next evening, I prepared my house for Jared's visit. The security system was running perfectly, recording everything in high definition. Eli was hidden in the basement with backup recording equipment and a direct line to the police. Patricia Halloran was positioned across the street with a telephoto lens, documenting everything for the divorce proceedings. At exactly 8 o'clock, Jared knocked on my front door. He was a thin, nervous man in his 30s, with the pale complexion of someone who spent too much time indoors, staring at computer screens. He carried a briefcase and kept glancing around like he expected to be arrested at any moment. Mr. Warren, thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Come in. Can I get you something to drink? No, thank you. I'd prefer to keep this brief. He set his briefcase on my kitchen table and opened it. I've prepared some documents that outline a potential settlement agreement. I glanced at the papers. They were surprisingly professional, offering a substantial cash payment in exchange for my agreement not to pursue criminal charges against anyone involved in Claire's misunderstanding. This is quite generous, I said. But I'm curious, where would this money come from? Various parties who have an interest in resolving this matter quietly? You mean David Halloran? The man who was planning to murder me for my life insurance money? Jared's face went pale. I think there's been some confusion about the nature of no confusion at all. I pulled out my phone and started playing the hospital break room recording. I have hours of audio and video evidence of all of you planning my murder. He started to stand, but I held up my hand. Sit down, Jared. We're not finished talking. I want a lawyer. You'll need one. But first, I want to hear you explain how a hospital technician gets involved in a murder conspiracy. His hands were shaking now. It wasn't supposed to be murder. Claire said she just wanted to make you sick, weak enough that you'd agree to a divorce settlement. And the life insurance? That was David's idea. He said if something happened to you accidentally, Claire would be financially secure. Something like what? A car accident. While you were feeling sick from the supplements. I leaned back in my chair. So you provided the poison, David provided the murder method, and Claire provided the access. Very thorough. We never actually went through with it. Only because I found out first. I stood up and walked to the kitchen window. Tell me, Jared, do you see that woman across the street with the camera? He turned to look, his face growing even paler. That's David's wife. She's been documenting this entire conversation. She's also filed for divorce, frozen all their assets, and reported him to his employer for theft. David's going to lose everything. What do you want from me? I want you to call the police and confess to everything. I want you to provide evidence against David and testify against Claire at her trial. And I want you to resign from the hospital and never work in healthcare again. And if I don't, then I release all the evidence to the police, the hospital administration, your uncle Dr. Morrison, and the local news media. You'll be facing murder conspiracy charges, your family will be destroyed by scandal, and you'll spend the next 20 years in prison. Jared stared at me for a long moment, then reached for his phone. I'd like to report a crime, he said when the dispatcher answered. I was involved in a conspiracy to commit murder. As I listened to him confess, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. My children were safe, my enemies were defeated, and justice was being served. Claire had wanted to destroy my life and start fresh with her lover. Instead, she'd destroyed her own life and handed me the tools to rebuild mine stronger than ever. By the time the police arrived to arrest Jared, David was already in custody. Patricia had called them when he showed up at her house, drunk and threatening. Trish had been arrested earlier that day based on her recorded confession. The conspiracy was over. My family was safe, and I had won. Standing in my kitchen, watching the police lead away the last of my wife's accomplices, I realized that Claire had been wrong about one thing. I wasn't clueless at all. I was a soldier. And soldiers don't just survive. They win.